Hey guys, so in this video, we are going to be looking at the motion path. Now, this is an animation that's only available in Drift Pro. And so without further ado, let's see what this does. So here, the default animation here is just a circle. So as you see here, I have a circle and it animated one time. Now, obviously we could do repeat, -1, and then it's just going to kind of continuously go in a circle. Now for circles, we probably want to have a 0 delay here. And I think linear easing looks best for circles. So there's just a quick snip. So there's just a few tips for circles. Again, which is the default motion here. It's a pre-baked path. I hope to eventually have more pre-baked paths, but further on, you'll see that you'll be able to not wait for me and do your own custom ones anytime you want. So again, to just kind of have something that's kind of hovering there on page load, you can just do repeat -1, so it's infinite. Set the repeat delay to 0 because you don't want to do a circle, then delay, and then do another circle, right? You just want to have it to be continuous. And lastly, I think linear looks best for if you just want something to kind of go in a continuous motion, or else it's going to be like a vroom. It's going to go like, here's an example of it. It doesn't really look all that great. I don't know. Maybe that's the effect you want. Maybe if you were to go a lot slower, right? So if you do a really slow animation here, like 20 seconds, okay, you can give this, it takes 20 seconds to go all the way around. So at that point, maybe you could do something other than linear. But if you're going to have a faster animation for that circle, I think linear is just going to really look the best. But play around. You can do you. All right, so let's say you don't want to have this a circle. Let's look at this. So first off, let's look at kind of the implementation here a little bit. So inside, obviously, I have a class here. I'm animating WS logo. And what I've done here is actually, this is my SVG. I've added that class directly onto the SVG itself. That way I'm actually animating the actual SVG, okay? And what's kind of cool, I'm not going to do this here, but if you want to animate parts of an SVG, you could do that as well, just by simply going ahead and adding classes to the exact path or element within your SVG. You can add a class to parts of an SVG and only animate that one part of the entire SVG image. Really cool, awesome stuff there. You can use that in any trick in all of Drift Pro. So definitely play with that trick. Now that we see kind of how everything's linked up, how I'm linking this motion path to the SVG, let's go ahead and take things to the next level. So outside of circle, we also have the ability to define an SVG path ID that we can follow. And so what I've done here is I have an SVG, and I do have to say, I think that this is the best route that I'm about to show you right now to do custom paths. I have an SVG that is this path. Okay. Inside the actual path here, okay, I have an ID and it's set to WS path. So I have an ID not on the SVG, on the actual path that this is going to follow. That's very important. The ID must be on the path. Okay. So here I have a SVG path. It's just a standard S curve. And I've made sure that that ID is inside the SVG and assigned to the path. Essentially, all I need to do is pass that ID to motion. We can also, and then we want to align to the path. And let's go ahead and preview that. And there we go. Our SVG animates along that path. Now, you might want to have the actual SVG path on your page, right? I mean, I have this here because so we can visualize and visually see the path that the icon is actually going along. But if you're using a Foundation 6 SVG stack for this, you can easily either override the stroke if your SVG has one. Here I'm actually adding a stroke because my SVG has none. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the stroke and let's preview that again. So now the path exists on the page. It's just invisible. And our icon is animating along that path. I think that this is definitely the best way to go. Now, if you want to have, let's say, this icon going along a path that is on top of maybe something else, you would potentially take this SVG and maybe use a position swatch to position it somewhere so that it's exactly where you want it on the page. Then, obviously, while you're doing that, you'll probably turn on some strokes so you can see it. And once you have everything enabled and aligned to where you want, you will turn off all stroke and all fill on that SVG. That way, your thing animates exactly where you want it. Now, this could be cool as well if you have some sort of actual icon SVG and you want to animate something maybe around that. This could be an interesting feature for that as well. I don't have an example of that, but that you can do. Really, imagination is your only limits here, right? So, what's next? Oh, we also have auto rotate to path. Let's just show you what this auto rotate to path does. That essentially, if you notice, the icon rotates along with the path. So if you were to have, let's say, like a little car that's driving over these hills, you would want to have this auto rotate path enabled so that the car actually rotates with the road, so it looks like it's driving on it. Now, there's one last way to accomplish motion path, and that's defining a custom path. And this is essentially the path that is inside of the SVG that we used earlier. But I want to show you a cool tool that we have now this feature is still somewhat a little bit under development. Over time, we'll refine it and make it nicer, but this is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and there's a helper stack here called Motion Path Builder. Okay. If you notice here, there's a bunch of instructions on how to use the builder. But essentially what we're going to do is I'm going to delete all our motion SVG path animations. I'm going to take this builder and I'm going to plop it directly above where my SVG is, where I potentially want to animate that. I'm going to put in the class of the logo that I want to animate. So I'm going to do WS logo because that's what we're going to animate. And let's go ahead and preview this. And what you'll notice here is it starts off with an S curve by default. But what's awesome here is we can go ahead and modify this path to be whatever we want. So we can really start making this a custom path here. And when we're happy with that path, and you can go ahead and if you hold down the option key, you can click on the line, and you can add a new point. So you can kind of drag that out and kind of do all kinds of stuff. So this is a really interesting, intriguing way to kind of have a builder, okay? And when we're happy, you just go ahead and click copy motion path. Okay. Now that I've copied that motion path, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a motion path animation. We're going to animate the WS logo and we're going to do a custom path. And I'm going to paste in this. When I click that copy path, this is the path to the path that we built inside preview. Pretty cool, right? So let's go ahead and now that I've built my path, we're going to get rid of that. And let's go ahead and preview this. Oh, and that's a little fast. Let's go ahead and slow that down a little bit. And there we go. As you see, my SVG followed that path. Now, something that I am currently still working on is the path sizing. Okay, so if you notice here, let's go ahead and make this icon left so that it's over here. If you notice, like that it did animate in that path, and that's probably not the best path, right? Example, but it didn't necessarily grow to the full width. I might have expected it to kind of grow and animate all the way out to the outside. So I'm still working on some of those controls, but it gives us a lot of really interesting things to play with here. So we can kind of build our own path. And if this path builder doesn't give you exactly what you want, the ultimate way is definitely the example we did before. Where we were doing the SVG path. That way that SVG lives within your DOM. You can position it wherever you want. and we can ensure that it's going to follow that exact SVG path, right? So while the custom path is interesting and it's cool, and that path builder is mind-blowingly awesome, I think the most reliable way to go is the SVG path. And you'll be building those SVGs in your favorite vector editor, whether that's Affinity Designer, Sketch, I don't know what else. I would recommend one of those two. Adobe Illustrator, I guess, if you're an Adobe fan. Okay. I have both Sketch and Affinity Designer. They're both great apps and will work perfect for designing, custom SVG images.